Good evening. It is 7 o'clock, and this is the time and the place for the meeting of the Montclair City Council, Housing Corporation, Montclair Housing Authority, and Montclair Community Foundation. Madam City Clerk, would you do the roll call?
Councilmember Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Martinez.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue.
Present.
Mayor Dutray.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
It is now the time for our invocation.
Tonight's invocation will be given by Pastor Donald Ruckert, and the pledge will be led by Councilmember Johnson.
Good evening and Merry Christmas to everyone. Let's pray. Well, Father, we want to just thank you for this assembly tonight. You have said in your word, Lord God, that we can call upon you and you would answer. Well, we need help. This council needs help. This city needs help. Our citizen needs help. So we're asking in Jesus' name that you would guide the hearts and minds of these men and women that you have entrusted this city and its citizenship into their hands. We pray that you would guide them and lead them. We ask that you would give them the wisdom that they need, Lord God, in the upcoming days and months and years, so that they may navigate the confusion and distraction, Lord God, that the enemy brings. And we want to thank you in advance, Lord God, for helping Montclair, helping our great city, placing us on the map, using us as a model, so that you can execute your plans, your purpose, and your will. And we want to thank you tonight, and we give you the glory and give you all the honor, Lord God, because we recognize you as our sovereign, our source, our strong tower, as the strength of our life. And we bless you tonight in Jesus' name. Amen.
Please join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That brings us to our special presentation for the evening. We will have a special this is the fun part, I think, for the council, especially at the end of the year meeting. A special presentation for 3 families who have won our annual Holiday Home Decoration Contest. At this time, I would like to introduce Rosa Rangel, a member of our Community Activities Commission, and she will be telling us about our winners.
Good evening, Council. As a member of the Montclair Community Activities Commission, it gives me a great pleasure to announce the top 3 winners of the City of Montclair 23rd Annual Holiday Home Decoration Contest. There were many outstanding nominations, and this year was no exception. As always, the judging was very difficult. A total of 26 nominations were received this year. The Commission tries to give everyone an opportunity to be selected. Therefore, past winners are ineligible for 3 years. During the week of December 6th, each CAC member drove around to judge every entry. We applaud everyone for doing an excellent job of enhancing Montclair neighborhoods during the holiday season. After I read a brief description of each home and show photos of the decorations, I will ask the winners to come forward to be presented with a framed certificate and a gift card to a Montclair store or a restaurant of their choice. Let us begin. First, we have the home of Leslie Hayden, a new homeowner in Montclair since August of 2021. Her home is located at 4832 Rodeo Street and joyfully shines bright with Christmas decor. a beautiful Merry Christmas sign lights up the front of the sidewalk. Two imaginary toy soldiers stand guard on each side of the walkway, leaning towards the front door of the house. On the side of the driveway, a Santa stop sign, reindeers, gifts, and lights glow beautifully in the front yard of the home. The house roof line and windows are all decorated with bright lights that also make the house shine. In front of the house stands a tree adorned with colorful lights, two reindeers, imaginary penguins, and a snowman, bringing joy to the holiday season. The house radiates with a huge variety of holiday decor and lights that brighten up the entire home during this holiday season. Will Leslie Hyden please come forward to accept the Holiday Light Extravaganza Award?
If the council will join me in front, we can present this. Behalf of the City of Montclair, the council assembled here, and our CAC members, we would like to present you this certificate for the Holiday Home Decorating Contest. Your home is really festive and brightens our community. Thank you.
Yeah, wait for the... Congratulations. Visitors of all ages will be delighted to see the holiday displayed at the home of the Flores family, located at 9917 Pradera Avenue. The yard is full of lighted Santa animals, and these are outlined with strings of colorful lights. A lighted Merry Christmas sign greets visitors on the front gate, and a tall reindeer stands at the front yard of welcoming all guests to this festive home. At the side of the house, an archway stands bright and tall as you make your way to the front of the house. Outside the front door, there are two Santa Claus figures, and these are two nativity scenes with the bright angel welcoming guests into this colorful home. Would the Flores family please come forward to accept the Simply Christmas Award?
On behalf of the City of Montclair, the City Council, our Community Activities Commission, we are pleased to present you with this certificate for your beautiful home, Simply Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Finally, the house of the Arriola family, located at 4352 San Bernardino Court, is not to be missed. The plants located at the front yard are outlined in colorful lights for the holiday season. A tall, bright angel with a trumpet stands at the front yard, as well as a waving and smiling snowman welcoming guests into the home. An igloo with a waving snowman and toy soldiers light up the front landscape. The house roof line and front entry arches are outlined in bright, colorful lights making this home a must-see this holiday season. We would like to ask the Arriola family to come forward and receive the Merry and Bright Award.
On behalf of the City of Montclair, Council on Community Activities Commission, everybody in our community, we thank you for your festive home. It's merry and bright, and it really fits the name. Thank you so much. Thank you. Stand here so we can get a picture.
Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations to all our winners. Members of the community are encouraged to build all of these homes. A list of all the winners is available this evening and will be listed on the city's website and Facebook page. Please drive by and view the beautiful decorations and holiday spirit exhibited by the residents of Montclair. Thank you, good evening, and this concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Rangel. And if I might, would all of our CAC members who are here tonight just stand up for a moment so we can recognize you? In a trying year, you have all done a tremendous job. Thank you for your efforts. And we have Richard Escalante, Arturo Padilla, Rosa Rangel, Diane Wells, Darlene Ferraro, and Lori Milheiser. Alex Hernandez was not able to join us this evening. Thank you for your dedicated service to this community. And if you would like to stay for the remainder of the meeting, you're welcome to do so. If you'd prefer to go out and go do some holiday shopping or decorating or baking or spending time with family, you're welcome to do that as well. We appreciate the efforts of everybody who made this such a beautiful, beautiful year with these wonderful homes. Thank you. That brings us to our public comment. I'll wait a moment.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue, do you
Yes.
mind if I check something on your computer for a second?
Yes. I don't. What's the problem?
His computer screen can't see the Zoom screen. See it now?
Right now, it is showing the council chambers.
Can you see the participation list?
Yes,
Okay, so now you can see who has their
a
hands
little
raised.
bigger, but that's okay. I see a hand raised from Mayor John Dutre. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I just wanted to state congratulations to the three households, three beautiful homes, and to our Community Activities Commission. And if staff can give me a list, I will personally make a stop at all three homes when I return from my vacation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm assuming it's part of public comment, Bruce Kulp? Or is it to a specific item?
I actually do have some advance requests to speak under public comment.
Okay,
And then I have 2 requests to speak under specific items. And I'm assuming that Mr. Culp would like to speak under public comment.
okay. So should we go with the Zoom people first, or should we go with our people who are here in the audience?
I did receive the card before the meeting, so
Okay,
I could call up the speaker in the audience, who's
Okay.
Rob Pipersky.
I'm here because a couple of meetings ago, we were talking about, we talked about the Greyhound bus coming to Montclair. And I have serious concerns about the city council's decision to postpone the vote on the Greyhound bus line coming to Montclair. The staff worked diligently to make the service available to Montclair citizens. I am concerned about the underlying reasons why one member of the city council opposes this and how he was able to sway the others to postpone the project. It was on the agenda and a vote should have been taken. It could have passed 4-1, and it could have failed if the council chose to ignore or disregard what our staff decided. The Greyhound bus service primarily serves minority communities, people of color, blacks, and Hispanics. Is this a subtle way of keeping these lower income minorities from our city? During the council meeting, the high crime rate surrounding the Claremont facility was a concern, and it is the fault of the Greyhound service that is attracting the criminal element. I believe this is not true, but a ruse to keep out minorities and people of color from Montclair. Montclair offers a safer environment for lower income people to travel and visit family and friends. In addition, Montclair does not have a cheap motel in the area that attracts the type of criminal behavior alluded to in the news article. There is no nearby freeway off-ramp attracting homeless to solicit monies and loiter in the area, nor does it have a fast food restaurant attracting the diverse clientele into the area. Racism, be it covert or overt, cannot be tolerated in our diverse community. The city of Montclair has a predominantly Hispanic and minority community, and many are lower income and may need the services offered by the Greyhound bus line. I have had the opportunity to take and pick up family and friends who have traveled by bus. However, I was always afraid to take them to the Claremont depot because it felt unsafe to leave someone there. Not because of Greyhound made the area dangerous, but the surrounding area was where you would not want to drop off someone you care for. I only wish when my family and friends used the long-distance bus service, the Montclair Trans Center was available. All people need to be respected, treated fairly, and provided a safe place to begin and end their travels. It may not be the intent to be racist by our city council by not approving this, but the optics sure smack of racism by denying minorities the ability to travel safely from Montclair to all points throughout the United States. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, are there any other people wishing to address the council tonight?
I do have another speaker for the Greyhound issue, but that is on the agenda.
Right.
And then Mr. Culp, we could ask what he would like to speak on, and we have another request to speak on the safe routes to school item.
Okay, so the Greyhound item, we do have as a separate agenda item tonight. As far as Safe Routes to School and Mr. Kulp, whom should we take first? I don't know who submitted their cards first. That's all.
Mr. Culp, I think he has just a general public comment, so
Okay.
he's the last one.
Go ahead.
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. Just wanted to, I do want to speak on item C2 later on. Currently now, I just want to provide some support for the SBCTA for providing over $300,000 for the Pacific Electric Trail Bridge. It demonstrates how the County of San Bernardino enjoys the entire Pacific Electric Trail and Montclair's portion of it, and how important it is to a regional trail system that'll also eventually serve the San Antonio Creek Trail. Montclair decides to move forward on that project. So wanted to offer my support and appreciation to the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority for providing those $300,000 plus funds to complete the bridge project. Also, I just wanted to wish everybody in Montclair a Merry Christmas and to make sure everyone's safe, wear your mask, get your booster shots during this very dangerous time of Omicron coronavirus. It's very dangerous. Make sure you take your precautions when you're with family and friends and out shopping. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culp. And for the next speaker,
Our next speakers are for the Greyhound and the Safe Routes to School issue.
okay, thank you. So there are no other speakers tonight other than for the Safe Routes to School and the Greyhound. That brings us to our public
Mayor
hearing.
Dutray does have his hand raised.
Oh,
also.
okay, I'm trying to, yes, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I don't have my hands raised, so I'll unraise. Sorry about that.
Okay. That brings us to item number 8, public hearing. Consider adoption of Resolution 21-3329, making findings pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, a conditional use permit and precise plan of design to allow the establishment of a 3,950 square foot full-service restaurant with drive-through service and outdoor dining at Panera Bread Cafe within the boundaries of the North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan at 9052 Central Avenue and 5220 Moreno Street. Many of you will recall that this was the former site of Islands, which is closed about 2010. And those of you who have been around here a long time will remember it was the old Vandekamps restaurant with the windmill on it. And we'll now hear from staff.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rue, members of the City Council, Mayor Dutray. As you're aware, the land use and design review entitlements within North Montclair downtown specific plan boundaries require review and consideration by the City Council. Over the past 5 years, city staff, actually maybe longer than 5 years, city staff has worked with CIM Group, Target, and others to develop the former Islands restaurant into a Panera Bread Cafe. However, after repeated attempts to work with all of the parties to accommodate a sit-down restaurant with outdoor and drive-through service, the existing site ended up proving unworkable. Ultimately, the parties agreed to a land swap that would give the island site to which is currently owned by 5060 Montclair Plaza Lane Holdings Venture, which is AKA CIM Group. And in exchange, the Target would receive the land that the island is currently on. So the land that island is on would go to Target, and Target would then give land approximately the same size to CIM Group, or again, 5060 Montclair Place Lane Holdings Venture. The illustration on page 7 of your agenda report demonstrates what this land swap looks like. You can see where the boundaries are defined for the target area, at least as far as the existing islands. And then adjacent to that on the left side is the land swap that Target will be giving in lieu of making that exchange. The proposed project provides for a 3,950 square foot Panera Bread Cafe with drive-through service and 2 separated outdoor dining areas on a 12,000 square foot site. The subject site is within the Town Center Transition Overlay Zone of the North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan. The project requires approval of a conditional use permit for the proposed drive-through service and the 2 outdoor patio dining areas. The outdoor patio proposed for the south side of the building will have 26 seats, and the patio proposed for the east side of the building will have 9 seats. The project also requires a precise plan of design, approval for the proposed site plan, building design, landscape plans, and the signage. For the site plan, the drive-through will be a single-lane drive design with stacking capacity for 11 vehicles. The drive-through starts on the east side of the site's 53 parking spaces. The parking fill that is being created by the land swap. So when the Island restaurant goes away, Target will have that area turned into additional parking due to the loss of the land that they will be swapping for the new Panera Bread Cafe. Panera, through a reciprocal parking agreement, will share those 53 parking spaces along with Target and the inline stores at the Target Retail Center. Based on building dimensions of 3,950 square feet, 20 parking spaces are required for the Panera Bread Cafe, but the required capacity, as I indicated, there are 53 spaces that are being created, so the required capacity will exceed that by 33 spaces. The drive-through lane wraps around the north side of the building and exits on the west side where the pickup windows is located. The drive-through configuration is represented in the site plan, which is included in your agenda packet. I'm sure you've each had an opportunity to look at that site plan where you can see how the configuration of the layout is not only incorporated, but as well as all of the other components of the project going forward, including the building design, the landscape plan, and the signage. The building's architecture is a modern design that features expansive windows and other design elements that achieve the North Montclair downtown's objectives to achieve a downtown appearance. Elevations and floor plans, again, are demonstrated in the site plan that is included in your agenda packet. And within that agenda packet, with that site plan, you will see that the various materials and colors of the proposed building are represented in the site plan. Conceptual landscape plan and irrigation plan for the project is also represented in the included plan. Most of the existing trees on the site will be retained, and then there will be a few additional trees that will be removed. The only trees that will be removed in this particular project will be those that are at the direct location where the project is being, the cafe will be constructed. The proposed project will also incorporate painted logos on the north and west elevations of the building, advertising panels on the east elevation, and directory signs, and the signage is also depicted in the elevations that are included in the site plan in your agenda packet. Integral to the project is creation of a new lot line adjustment to accommodate the Panera Bread Cafe with a lot line adjustment. The lot line adjustment would create the identically sized 12,000 square foot lot for the Panera Bread Bakery Cafe and provide for demolition of the former Islands Restaurant building where the new parking field will be constructed. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended City Council make the necessary findings and approve the project. The Planning Commission also determined that the proposed project qualifies for exemption under California Environmental Quality Act. According to state CEQA guidelines, when a public agency has prepared an EIR on a specific plan after January 1, 1980, an EIR or negative declaration is not necessary if the project is in conformity with the latest, with the specific plan. The EIR and the subsequent EIR for the North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan and the amended North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan were prepared in 2006 and 2017 respectively. And the potential environmental impacts of a proposed restaurant project with drive-through service and patio dining were evaluated as part of that EIR process. Staff is also supportive of the proposed project and finds that it is well-designed, attractive, consistent with design goals of the North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan, would result in an immediate and significant improvement to the ambience of Moreno Street, and would complement existing and future development anticipated within the North Montclair downtown specific plan and the Montclair Place District specific plan. Staff is also supportive of a CUP to allow drive-through lane and outdoor seating. The use is desirable to the public convenience and public welfare by providing outdoor dining and the purchase of food without leaving one's personal vehicle. And of course, during the current COVID pandemic, those two choices are very much important as we consider dining in the community. I also note that the North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan encourages dining in outdoor areas throughout the plan. The drive-through lane is designed to minimize on and off-site traffic conflicts, and outdoor dining is separated from the drive-through queue. The use conforms to good zoning practices and compliance with the North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan, and the use is not contrary to the city's adopted general plan. Staff is also supportive of the precise plan of design. The project is consistent with the planned development land use designation of the general plan and the town center zoning district in the North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan. The project contributes to the ongoing formation of the Moreno Street streetscape and development patterns envisioned in the North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan. And the proposed architectural design is complementary to the recent developments within the area and is consistent with the style guidelines of the North Montclair Downtown Specific Plan. The project was advertised for this evening's public hearing, and notices were mailed to adjacent property owners as well as retail tenants within a 300-foot radius of the proposed project. In relation to the fiscal impact, approval of the entitlement application will have no direct impact on the general fund. However, development of the project will produce property and sales tax benefits to the community and may serve as a catalyst for future development within the area. Staff recommends the City Council adopt resolution number 21-3329, making findings pursuant to CEQA and improving a CUP and PPD for construction of the Panera Bread Cafe. That concludes my comments on this particular item.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Before I open the public hearing, I will ask if any of my colleagues have specific questions on this item.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I don't have a question. I do have a comment. I think this has been a long time coming, and I think if we approve this tonight, this would be an awesome addition to our city. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, I will open the public hearing on item number 21-3329. Madam City Clerk, do we have any cards submitted this evening to speak on this specific issue?
There is one person raising their hand on Zoom, which is Mr. Kulp.
Okay, and we have somebody at the microphone. Is this on behalf of the applicant?
I'm the applicant.
Okay. So maybe what I'll do is take the applicant first and then Mr. Kulp.
Mr. Chair, members of the City Council, members of staff, good evening. My name's Nina Ray with RSI Group, 3187 Airway Avenue, Costa Mesa, California, representing Panera Bread. I would like to thank staff for all the due diligence that they have done to work with us to get us here today. We have reviewed all the conditions of approval and do not have any concerns accepting the conditions. I'm here to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Kulp.
Hi, this is Bruce, and yes, I would just like to congratulate and show my appreciation to the staff for putting together this. I know that they've been working for years on this particular project, and finally get this Panera project into the lady just spoke. Welcome to the Montclair neighborhood. I'm a neighbor about a block away from you. I'll be visiting Panera Bread quite often. We eat a lot at the other location in San Dimas where I used to work, and I'm looking forward to having Panera Bread. My only question is if there's an answer to this is, I don't know, I know it's gone through the Planning Commission approval and tonight for City Council approval. Is there any other roadblocks in the way? Is it going to be 4 years before groundbreaking, or are we ready to break ground as soon as the holidays are over? That's all I really had a question about. Thank you.
Thank you. I
Can I-
believe the applicant may have an answer.
We actually have submitted plans for building and grading plan check. As soon as we can get our permits, we would like to be under construction early February if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. With no other public comment on this item, I will close the public hearing and return it to council for any specific questions that they may have or any motions that they may wish to make.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I move to approve resolution number 21-3229 as submitted.
Okay?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I will second that. I did hit my button. It's on your screen. I was just waiting.
I'm trying to follow all of them, yes.
I was just waiting for recognition, that's all.
Okay.
I will second the project. Ma'am, thank you so much for applying and bringing this project forward. That building has been sitting idle for some time, and I was in high school at that old Islands when I would go there and eat burgers quite a bit. And I'm looking forward to Panera Bread being in Montclair now. My friends in Chino Hills are going to get mad that I'm no longer going to be going over there, and I'll be coming over here. It's going to be a lot closer to home, but looking forward to it. Wish you much success. Welcome to Montclair. We appreciate your investment.
We do have a motion by Councilmember Johnson, a second by Councilmember Lopez.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Mayor?
This is John DeTrey. Can you hear me?
Hand raised.
Okay, I just noticed the hand up here. It's hard to read on this screen. I do apologize, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, this is on behalf of the city of Montclair. We've been talking about this for 2 or 3 years. Let's vote on this and let's make this happen. Welcome to Montclair.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Johnson and a second by Councilmember Lopez. Madam City Clerk?
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez? Aye. Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue?
Aye.
Dutray? Mayor Dutray?
Mayor DeTrey votes aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes 5-0. Welcome to Montclair. I know you will do wonderfully right here. Thank you. It's a great location. That brings us to item number 8, our consent calendar. I will begin on my left, your right in the audience. Do we have any items we wish to pull this evening? Councilmember Martinez.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to pull item C2,
C as in cat.
B as in cat 2,
2.
C as in cat 4, C as in cat 8. That's all.
Okay, so that, Councilmember Johnson has requested item number C as in cat 2, 4, and 8. Councilmember Lopez, do you have any items you wish to pull?
Yes, sir. Item B, like boy, 16.
B as in boy 16.
C2's already been pulled. C5, C9, C12, and C13. Mainly for purposes of a quick question or comment.
And C13. Okay, so on the agenda this evening for our consent calendar, and I hope I have it right, Madam City Clerk, we have pulled item B as in boy 12, 16. We've pulled item number C as in cat 2, 4, 5, 8, 9, 12, and 13. Do we wish to proceed with the consent calendar that remains and then vote on these, or do we want to?
Was B12 pulled?
I had B12 here being pulled.
Mr. Lopez.
Was I wrong?
Record B12 as being pulled, so. And then, Mayor Dutray, did he want to pull anything?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I move for approval for the remainder of the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion by the mayor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's been a second by Councilmember Martinez. Madam City Clerk, for the remainder of the consent calendar item, we need a roll call vote.
Yes. Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez? Aye. Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue?
Aye.
Mayor Dutray?
Aye.
Thank you.
That brings us to the pulled consent calendar items, beginning with item number B16.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I pulled the item. I just want to make a quick comment. I am pleased to see that we are bringing on staff Rosemary Horning. I have worked with her in the past maybe 8 years or so, on a variety of projects to our neighbors of the north. I'm pleased to see that she found a new home, and her expertise, her knowledge, her skill is definitely, will be of benefit to Montclair. Whoever approached Ms. Horning, kudos to you for bringing her on staff. This will be advantageous for us. So Rosemary, welcome to Montclair. Looking forward to what you are going to contribute to the city and the projects you will get accomplished for us. Thank you.
Yes, I think she'll make a good addition to the city. Madam City Clerk, do you want us to vote on each of these individual or take them all at the end?
It should probably be, yeah, there could be different votes,
Okay.
so.
Then,
This is John Dutray. I would suggest that we just move on, and in the items there's no controversy. We'll just make a second motion for approval of those, and I'll be happy to be the mover of that motion at the appropriate time.
so take them as an omnibus motion, okay. That brings
Yeah.
us to item number C2. Consideration of agreement 21-66 with Greyhound Lines. Before I have the council comment, we do have somebody, we have Mr. Kulp online who would like to comment. We also have a card that was submitted.
Yes.
Yes, let's start with the card that was submitted.
Okay, and that was from Carolyn Raft, and she is also on Zoom.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. Good evening, council. I was checking out the comments that was made last time by Mr. Lopez, and I don't know what Mr. Lopez's reasoning was to state what he did on the statistics, unless he was dreaming, but apparently, as usual, he was not right. In my 28 years, I never said anything that wasn't true. Montclair is completely a different situation than Claremont. And even if he said what he said was true, first of all, Claremont, Greyhound is right next to a motel, a restaurant, among other businesses where you might have people hanging around. But at the Trans Center, there's nothing but parking, and that's not a desirable place to hang out. So I have always felt that the location in Claremont was definitely the wrong place for Greyhound to be in the first place, and that the Trans Center was a much more reasonable place for its station to be. I think that the station there will bring more traffic, more knowledge of Montclair, and than what we have now, and be a really good asset to the city. I think Mr. Lopez would be better off studying whatever he intends to comment about, as I always have in the past, and not make such mistakes as he has on this subject. I also would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and I hope you all do the right thing by approving the Greyhound tonight, because, as I said, it's a great asset to Montclair, and if I was sitting there on that council, I definitely would approve it, and because I think it's something that would be very good for us. So thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, our next speaker is Bruce Kulp.
Hi there. Yeah, I think I'm going to probably echo Mr. Babersky's and Mr. Raff's comments a little bit here. As a resident of North Montclair, which I know last week there was some comments about us, trying some kind of, not being able to protect Montclair residents of in the north, I didn't see that as being an issue. I think I made a comment last meeting that I fully support having Greyhound uh, uh, bus station 500 feet away from basically where I live, where I'm looking out the window right now. I can see the Montclair Trans Center station. And what a wonderful benefit it would be to the residents of Montclair to have a nationwide public transit option within the city, and very much affordable. This is a transportation option that is affordable to almost every resident in the city of Montclair. That benefits every resident of Montclair. We're not our median income is lower than some of the many surrounding cities, and so we need these types of available, affordable options that allow our residents, including myself, the ability to travel nationwide and have that option, whereas, plane tickets and other forms of transportation may not be affordable or available to us. So I was very disappointed in hearing the comments of a particular council member last week of, portraying the clientele of Greyhound buses as criminals and things like that. He mentioned some kind of research he's done, even though he wouldn't name his sources, which I find, suspicious at the very least. And, trying to throw the Claremont Police Department under the bus without naming names, I find that a very suspicious type of way to do your research. You need to, if you're a public official, you need to make sure that your research is public and that you identify where you're getting your information from, if you're getting it from anything other than your own mind. It sounds like, you're disparaging people of color and minorities who primarily use the Greyhound bus system, and doesn't surprise me, knowing your anti-LGBTQ mindset. It just goes hand in hand with that, and just another form of racism that you seem to commit. So just to let you know, I do fully support this. I don't see any issues with crime or anything at the Montclair Trans Center. And I hope that tonight the council listens to the residents here and passes this unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culp. Thank you, Mr. Culp. Madam City Clerk, I do not see any other hands raised on this screen. Do we have any other cards?
There are no more cards. I believe the city manager wanted to give a presentation on this item as well.
Okay. Mr. City Manager.
To the council comments first, since the item was pulled by members of city council.
Okay, and looking at this, I see one council member in queue to speak. That's Councilmember Johnson. Next would be Councilmember Lopez. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. When we last heard this item, I really thought it was a great idea. But then when we came to the meeting, we heard so much negative information from Councilmember Lopez. And just to err on the side of caution, just in case what he said was accurate, I wanted to wait and make sure that that information was correct so that we could make a decision based upon all of the data. And so coming here tonight, what I really wanted to hear from staff, and perhaps that's what Mr. City Manager was about to do, what I wanted to hear from staff is what efforts were taken to verify the information or verify or debunk the information that Mr. Lopez presented. The report that he received, he said he received from the lieutenant in Claremont that had a large volume of police calls. I want to know if those were police calls for Greyhound or just the general area. And I also wanted to hear about what if the lieutenant was able to corroborate his statements and any other data that we were not able to review before we came to the meeting. So I'll wait for Mr. City Star's report.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Next in queue is Councilmember Lopez.
I will also defer to the city manager's report to hear what any discussion since the last meeting had taken place by either the police chief, the city manager's office, or any other staff regarding the issue before I make any comments further.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. I would like to say that when we last discussed this item and we decided to postpone it, as Councilmember Johnson said, she looked at it to err on the side of caution. I believe we also postponed this so that staff could look into some of the comments that were made, look at the situation, and bring us back something. I don't believe it had anything to do with trying to in any way disparage communities of color or anything else. I believe it was fully done to allow staff to respond to questions that were submitted. I can speak from my personal experience. I have been a longtime advocate of our lower income families, especially when it comes to housing, where at times I feel I'm alone. But I don't believe anybody up here has postponed this because they were against somebody. I believe they did it because they wanted to find out more information. Mr. Kulp said it's part of a national transportation network, and it is. I think I had said at one of the meetings when this was brought up that this is the only way for many families to be able to travel. Indeed, Greyhound has routes that are not there with Amtrak. They are not there with airline systems, and for many people who cannot drive or don't want to drive a great distance. So it's an alternative. In a multimodal transportation center, this adds to that. We will soon have the Gold Line. We have Riverside Transit, RTA. We have Omnitrans, and here in San Bernardino County, we have Foothill Transit to take families, business, and everybody else to destinations in LA County. This simply enhances that. So those are my comments at the moment. I will, Mr. Lopez, you still have requests to speak. Do you have another comment? No. Okay, that's okay. Just want to make certain. And now, Mr. City Manager, you have some comments.
Yes, well, there are a couple of issues that are of concern with this particular item. One was the presentation of the data, and the other is the accuracy of the data that was presented. So when it relates to the presentation of the data, there's nothing wrong with a council member doing independent research on any item that is on the agenda. However, for that information to become actionable, it has to be shared with all members of the City Council. It has to be shared in advance of the meeting so that that data can be vetted by city staff before it goes on to the City Council and becomes part of the record. So the council really had no alternative but to continue this item once the data was presented, particularly after Councilmember Lopez indicated that his vote was going to be based on the data that he was presenting that evening. So once a council member indicates that they are going to be making a decision based on data that they did independent research on, that other members of the governing body did not have access to, and if the governing body is going to take any action in considering that data as part of the record, then that data has to actually go through the vetting process, be part of the agenda report so that it could be presented to the City Council. So in regard to Mr. Pipersky's question earlier this evening, the council had no choice, particularly after Councilmember Johnson indicated that the data presented by Councilmember Lopez raised questions in her mind and that she needed to have further clarification on that. So in that regard, again, the council had no choice but to continue the item. Unfortunately, the data wasn't presented to the city council, to city staff for vetting until last week. However, in the interim, the chief of police did make contact with the Claremont Police Department to speak about the data that Councilmember Lopez had referenced at the last city council meeting. And I will be asking Chief Avels to come up to the podium and go over the data that was discussed by Councilmember Lopez. But in any event, the process of vetting that information is essential for the council to have if it's going to be actionable material. So that did not occur at that last council meeting. Since then, as I've indicated, staff has had an opportunity to go over the data after making contact with the City of Claremont. City of Claremont has indicated that the data was not properly presented to the City Council. In other words, it was misinterpreted or misrepresented. They've also indicated that they want to dissociate themselves from the comments that were made at the last City Council meeting because it was not their intent to convey to the community of Montclair or to Greyhound in any way that Greyhound lines was in any way an attractant of criminal activity. And I think as the data is discussed with members of the City Council by Chief Avels, you will learn rather quickly that of the up to 300 or more crimes that were reported based on that data that was provided to Councilmember Lopez, in fact, the incidents of reported crime for Greyhound during that period were actually fewer than 10. So the bulk of the data that was reported was actually for surrounding businesses. And when Chief Avels delivers his presentation, you will learn the Greyhound is only reported as a prominent location within the area that all police officers are familiar with. So when dispatch sends out a call in relation to an incident reported at that particular area, they merely use the Greyhound Depot as a location, not as the site where the criminal activity or whatever incident is being reported is actually occurring. So with that, I'll call up Chief Avels to do a presentation on the data. But I do want to stress that as he goes through the report, you will see that the actual attribution of activities as it relates to crime, as it relates to police calls for Greyhound specifically are less than 10. And of those calls, the majority of them are actually not related to criminal activity, but just for assistance for help and other types of non-criminal related calls. With that, Chief Avels?
So can you hear me? It seems like it's low volume. Thank you, City Manager Starr, Mayor Pro Tem Brew, and members of council, and remotely, Mayor Dutray. I did, as a result of the previous council meeting regarding the Greyhound, I did obtain a copy of the report that the lieutenant had provided to Councilman Lopez, and I started to analyze it myself, and then I had an opportunity to speak to the chief of police from Claremont, and in doing so, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about the report in and of itself, and something that I wanted to kind of touch on before I go into the actual calls that were related to the location is I wanted to speak a little bit about what Mr. Starr had said, and talking about how Greyhound is a landmark location. And as you know, a landmark location is something that's well known, is very prominent. And what is very common for us in law enforcement is when we have activities that are going on in a particular area, a police officer conducting enforcement or any type of contact activity in a particular location will oftentimes tell the dispatcher where he's at, and he may use a common location. So for instance, there's some businesses within our community, and I don't want to name the businesses. It makes it easier if I do, but I don't want to do that because I don't want to connect anything more out there in my speech here. But if you do a traffic stop in a particular location, or you conduct a check of a pedestrian in a particular area, whether it be a consensual contact or, like I said, a traffic stop for traffic enforcement violations, or just to get out and speak with somebody that may be involved in crime, the law enforcement officer oftentimes provides that location to dispatch that is commonly known to him as well as to many others that are working along with him. And, I'll use City Hall, so as an example. So, an officer may be conducting a traffic stop that's maybe just to the east of Alma Hoffman Park, but he says he's located at City Hall. So when he does that, It's a quick, easy reference point for anybody that may be coming to a system that knows roughly where he's at, and they'll be able to find him relatively easily. If that particular contact, say for instance, turned into a arrest of somebody under the influence of a drug, it would actually in the computer database list City Hall as the location for the drug activity, when in fact, it really didn't occur here. It didn't have anything to do with this particular location. It just happened to be close by, and it happened to be something that the officer called out. So very common when you look at any business in any city and you want to look at activities that are at that location, it's very possible that the activities listed to that location are really not relevant to that location. So it does require some significant analysis and paring down of the data to really try to determine what is actually connected to that particular location. And I remember Councilman Rue had asked me to try to do my very best at trying to figure out what was connected and what wasn't. And I'll be honest with you, that caused a lot of pressure on me because it's very difficult to do that. No, I know that. But it's very difficult for me to do that when the data doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to the city of Montclair. It comes from another community. So I really had to rely on the police chief from Claremont to really look at the calls for service himself and then report back to me as to what was most prominent and most significant. And when you took the report itself, it actually was a report of 22 and a half months worth of data. It wasn't 1 year. It started from January 1st of 2020 and it went to November 15th of 2021. So it's almost 2 years worth of data. And the report itself listed about 236 calls, 236 calls. And I believe there was 96 or 99 of those calls that were just in the year of 2020. But then when you started to go through and pair them out, it really demonstrated that in that total 22 and a half month period, there were only 8 calls that were actually connected to the Greyhound business in and of itself. And the reality with that 8, there was even one, so there was only 7. There was one that was actually a courtesy report. And what basically that means is Claremont Police Department took a report for an incident that occurred in another jurisdiction, but it's very likely the reporting party ended up at their location, and for the sake of providing a level of service, they took that report and then that case got forwarded to that actual jurisdiction. So in reality, for that 22 and a half months, there was only 7 that were connected to that particular location. And I don't have the specific details of them, and I don't think it would even be proper for me to talk about the specific details. But what I can tell you is that there were 2 calls in January of 2020 that were connected to that location, and one of them was a subject under the influence of alcohol, and they were arrested for public intoxication. The other one in January of 2020 was someone who refused to pay for their ticket. And I can't say that they were arrested for anything. I just know that that's what the report was about. It very likely it could have been resolved. There was another one in February of 2020, and it came out as a suspicious circumstance, but it turned out to be a mental health evaluation that was necessary. There was another one in July of 2020. It came out as a citizen assist, and it turned out to be a mental health evaluation for a subject. And then there was another one in December of 2020. It came out as a person disturbance, and it resulted in a mental health evaluation of an individual. So there was 3 mental health evaluations of subjects related to that 22 and a half month reporting period. And then there was a vandalism report in April of 2021, and it was just some graffiti that was on the building. And then in April of 2021, there was a grand theft report that came out, but that was the case that I told you about that actually occurred in another jurisdiction, and it was actually quite a distance away from this particular location, and they took a courtesy report for that, so it wasn't related to this location at all in Claremont. And then the last one was in May of 2021. It came out as a suspicious transient, and the subject was taken into custody for trespassing. So in reality, that's all the calls that occurred in that area. But I did want to touch back on the total amount of calls, because when you listen to the total amount of calls, it kind of shocks your conscience a little bit. It makes you think, oh my gosh, there's a lot of things happening there. But keep in mind the landmark location that I mentioned to you, Greyhound. That Greyhound location's been there for a long time. A lot of people know about it. So not only when an officer is doing enforcement and they may call out that location, keep in mind citizens call out those locations too. There is a lot of activity in and amongst that area. And just to give you an insight, and I did not look or ask the chief to pare down the calls related to neighboring businesses, and I'm not going to name the businesses, but I will tell you in close proximity, there's one business that had 542 calls in that same 22 and a half month period, and another one had 1,345 calls in that same 22 and a half month period. So I can't say, for instance, how many of those calls related to those neighboring businesses, but that tends to show the amount of activity that's in and amongst that area is very prevalent and not necessarily connected to Greyhound. But you can see the actual calls for service that I was actually able to determine through the Claremont chief. What was actually related is very, very minuscule. And based on the information I have here, it doesn't cause me any concern with the decision about us trying to bring Greyhound to our Montclair Trans Center. And I'll answer any questions if you may have any more, if I possibly can.
Chief. I need to see who is in queue. The first speaker I have listed in queue from the City Council is Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. I do have a comment for Chief Avels, but then I just have a general comment on top of that, if that's all right. For Chief Avels, thank you, and thank you to City Manager Starr and to staff for taking the allegations very seriously. Obviously, those types of accusations are things that the residents of Montclair would want to look into, so I absolutely appreciate that you did that. I also would like to apologize to Greyhound, and I hope that Greyhound understands that the views of one council person are not necessarily the views of all of the council members. I am concerned that in the future, if we have a situation where one council member is identifying facts that we are not aware of before the council meeting, that could have the effect of undermining our relationships with businesses and other entities, and undermining our negotiations, our contract negotiations in the future. So I'd really hope that moving forward, that does not happen, and that the city staff is given the opportunity to vet any serious allegations, such as the ones that were made.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. Next in queue is Councilmember Lopez.
Questions to the chief, is that's what you were asking for first. Three questions here based on my notes. Did anyone in your discussions with Claremont, did any of them share any circumstances or scenarios that involved the 7-Eleven on San Bernardino and Indian Hill and Pomona?
They did not specifically say anything about the 7-Eleven. What the chief did say when I talked with him was, because one of the issues that I asked him about was whether or not there were inmates arriving there on, or released inmates arriving there on the Greyhound lines, and if they had any issues with that. And what he had told me is in his entire career that he only had one incident that he could recall where it was potentially problematic with somebody who had been released from jail and then arrived in that location. And it was because they had purchased some alcohol and became intoxicated, and they ended up arresting him for public intoxication. But he said he was only aware of actually one particular incident where that occurred.
Of the 8 calls that you then say actually are only 7 apply, did any of those 7 or 8 calls relate to any serious crime? Not serious in the sense of anything felonious, but of any harm to another person, to property, whether that be the building, another car, threats, hostile people? Are any of those 7 or 8 calls associated with any of those circumstances?
Well, as I had stated, there was one where somebody had graffitied the building. And then other than that, I don't have any specific details beyond that information and what the chief had provided me that there were any threats to people. I don't know if there was something said during one of these investigations that could have been construed as a threat. All I can say is what it came out as and what the chief said was the result of their investigation and their report for those particular 8 incidents.
Now, Chief, this is a serious question. I'm not trying to be snippet about this. I'm being accused of fabricating phone calls. But as the city manager said, and you said, yes, there's 230-some phone calls in a log that were handed to me by Claremont PD that I, in discussions with them, requested. So I didn't make that up. What constitutes a call to a law enforcement agency, in this case, a police department? That's the question. And the reason why I ask that is, based on these 200-plus calls, and I did say that they did start at the beginning of 12/18/2020 or 1/8/2020, and they went forward, because I did mention in my comments at that meeting that it was during the COVID year, and they still had a bulk of calls during a COVID year when everything was shut down, to emphasize the point of the volume of calls during a non-active period. Nevertheless, isn't a call when a resident or a person picks up the phone, either dials the back line to the agency or 911 and registers some type of a complaint? Because if that's the case, then all these are calls on the log. But you're then saying that they're not necessarily calls and only 7 or 8 pertain to the address and business in question. So what constitutes the differential in calls?
Well, the specific circumstances would dictate it. So as an example, if there was somebody out on the sidewalk in front of the location, whether it be somebody committing a crime or needing a medical assistance at that particular location, it would get registered as that particular address, but it has nothing to do with that address. It just happens to be in front of that location. And as I had said, there were neighboring businesses that are immediately in close proximity, one that showed 542 and another one that showed 1,345. That doesn't mean that out of those numbers at those particular locations that they were all related to those specific locations, but it shows the level of activity that's going on in and amongst that area. To try to ensure what I was looking and what I was hearing was accurate, I actually spent some time over there watching the location, and I never saw any activity at that particular location that, other than people getting off the bus and getting in a car and leaving.
Were you in uniform?
Yeah, I was in uniform.
That's probably why.
In my unmarked car, though. I wasn't out in the public view. So, but what I did find is nearby in one of the restaurants was a homeless person asleep right at the entranceway, and everybody was just walking around the individual, going inside, going about their merry way. There's a lot of activity there. I don't think there's any question about that in that particular area. I think everybody knows that's been over there. It's very busy and very active, and it's one of the the more active locations, in my opinion, that's in Claremont. Again, that's my opinion. I don't work in Claremont, so I can't specifically say. I'm sure somebody else might say that there's other busier areas, but I do frequent that area because I do go over there to eat often, so I do see the activity that's over there, and it's busy. There's no question about that. So all I can say is, in talking to the chief, he looked at the same report that the lieutenant provided me, and he went through and looked at the calls, and he gave me the breakdown that he gave me regarding that particular report.
Now, I do understand that in some cases a report was taken and in other instances there were not. And I do know that every call doesn't necessarily warrant a report to be formally taken, registered, or implemented. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
Okay. So I understand that, but nonetheless, the issue for me was nonetheless calls. And having an officer respond repeatedly to the location, and that was my emphasis here, and that's why I brought this issue forward. I appreciate your investigation into this, you looking into this. Appreciate you presenting the information here tonight. Appreciate you answering my questions to the best of your ability tonight. I very much value you and your position. Obviously, we've had many conversations about this, so don't ever call that into question, please. If I question something with respect to some of these details or the differential in what constitutes a call or a circumstance or an instance, as opposed to something that warrants something more serious that needs to be registered. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I don't have any further questions of the police chief. I do have further comments, but you did ask for questions of the chief.
Why don't you, if you, I noticed Councilmember Johnson is next in queue, but why don't you finish with your, you've asked some questions of the chief, if you have any comments before I go to
Sure.
Councilmember Johnson.
Sure. In my comments at the last meeting that this was discussed, in no inference or statement, implied, inferred, or bluntly stated, was this ever an issue about one's color of skin. For those leveling that accusation at me, take a look at my skin, my hair, my heritage, and you'll clearly see that I am a minority myself. But I don't look through things through racially colored, tinged glasses for something like this. My issue has always been a level of public safety and potential crime. I'm not against Greyhound. There's people that use Greyhound that are legitimately need to use it for transportation purposes. As I stated, that was not the issue. As I stated, my concerns involved the releasing of criminals from institutions and using that service to travel or have the bus stop be their last stop, and then they go someplace or they get off the bus, they have nowhere to go, they have to walk to another destination because they just recently got released from being incarcerated. That's one example. I also brought up, based on the call log that I saw, the issues regarding the grand theft auto, the suspicious people, the potential graffiti, the vandalism, the prostitution. I get it that there are no hotels near the transit center here in the city where that particular activity would likely not happen. I've also been told, though, part of the concern is the 7-Eleven down on San Bernardino in Indian Hill, where some people that use the bus, either waiting for the bus or recently got off the bus, may go there to purchase liquor, get liquored up, and cause a disturbance to the public in the area. And I will say, if we move, as even the chief did say, there's a lot of activity there, no question. I agree. There is a lot of activity at that location, and by simply having a ticket stand here in Montclair at the transit center is no doubt shifting potentially all of that activity here to our city, where it's going to be our police officers, first and foremost, and secondarily, are firefighters that have to respond to inquiries and calls. I don't know if I shared this or not. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been calls for a potentially belligerent person hostile with a bus driver, a person passed out on the property, potential person under the influence on the property. Those are just examples. Those aren't from Claremont. Those are calls that came in recently here at the Trans Center in our own city. So if we already have similar calls to that effect at the Trans Center, why would we want to potentially exacerbate and add to that call volume that our police officers are going to have to respond to? That's my issue.
Can I clarify on something? When I said that there's no question that there's a lot of activity in the area, I was not specifically talking about Greyhound. I was talking about the collective area over there in Claremont. There's a lot more activity in and amongst the area beyond Greyhound, not Greyhound. So that's not what I was saying when I was referencing the amount of activity over there. And in relation to the calls for service at the Trans Center, I don't specifically have every call or the numbers that are going on over there, but some of the calls that you're speaking of are not uncommon throughout the entire community. So, I mean, I can't sit there and say that it would be a detriment. I don't think it would be a detriment for Greyhound to come to that location, and I don't think I would have any real concern about subjects buying alcohol and becoming intoxicated, you know, particularly individuals that are being released from jail. You know, we already have inmates that do get released up there that come from Chino Men's Prison. That's been a better part of 2 decades, and we haven't really had any issues with them either. And I say really because I can't specifically say that we haven't had one here or there along the way when I wasn't working, you know, or that I'm not completely aware of. But I don't really see the major concern with it. And when you're talking about individuals that have been released from prison coming from other states, I mean, the fact of the matter is the federal government or state jurisdictions running their prisons, they can't just kick somebody out of the front door of the jail and say, good luck getting back to California or good luck getting back to LA County. They have to provide them some measure of fare and method to get back here. You know, I doubt that they would fly them because of the cost that it would be, but nevertheless, it is reasonable and responsible to ensure that they have a method to get back where they reside. You know, if they're coming from Nevada, we can't just say that's a long road home, good luck walking. I mean, that would just be not the way to be and wouldn't be the legal thing to do. And so, you know, they may be coming in on Greyhound, but, you know, as the chief had said, he could only recall one incident where it was a major issue for them. And I can't specifically say how many years he's been there, but he is the chief, so he's probably been there for a great number of years, as I have myself here.
And Chief, I would hope that what you observe and what you just said holds true and continues, in that if there's only been one instance where that chief says it was pretty serious involving a person that got drunk in public and acting a little bit belligerent, or the call volume, I understand the calls examples that I listed no doubt happen throughout the city. I get that. But I'm highlighting here the Trans Center because that's what we're discussing here. I just think we're going to have a increased concentration of those particular calls at the Trans Center with the addition of Greyhound. I am just uneasy with Greyhound being at the Trans Center. It was stated at the other meeting that we need Greyhound because we're going to be a multifaceted Trans Center. If we did not have Greyhound at the Trans Center, it would still constitute a Trans Center because of what we currently offer as modes of transportation there with the Omnitrans and Gold Line coming. I'm still believing that it's going to happen. It is going to be a full-scale Trans Center with or without Greyhound. I don't think we need that component in Montclair. That's just my uneasiness. I still am apprehensive about it. And again, I hope your words hold true continually, because it sounds like this is going to go through, and that's fine. You win some, you lose some on votes here, and I understand that. I'm uneasy.
So understand this. I can never guarantee that we won't get calls.
No, I'm
mean,
not holding you to that. I'm just saying.
I know, but I just want to
hope
make
that
sure I say it, any business that you add into your community, you're going to get calls. You bring in a store to sell merchandise, you're probably going to get some shoplifting calls. So anything you add to it's going to increase calls. I mean, there's no question about it. The question is how many? I honestly don't really know. I can only look at the track history and listen to what the chief had told me and understand that the expectation is it's going to be very similar when it comes to us, but could be slightly different because the location is very different than the one that they're in over there. And that's kind of what I was trying to get at when I said about the activity in and amongst that area. There's a lot of activity going on, and it's not activity that you ever see happening at the Montclair Trans Center now. I drive through there every week and look at the activity to ensure my department is doing their due diligence and the proper service up there with what happens and the patrons that come to our facility for the transportation. And I can tell you my officers do a fantastic job at staying on top of it. If you went up there a few years ago, you would have noticed there was a lot of cars on the north parking lot area where people were setting up encampments up there, and there was activity starting to develop. And the officers got up there and addressed that issue. And they stay on top of it, and it hasn't ever raised its head again. It hasn't become a problem. And in fact, I don't have the specifics of it, but I would go out on a limb to say that our crime has gone down up there, and I hope that continues to be the case. And I hope that when anything we bring into that location as far as additional transportation doesn't become, a real problem. But obviously, I can't really be 100% certain of those things. All I can say is I looked at the report from an objective standpoint. I talked to the chief who has more intimate knowledge of it and could look at his data, and this is what he presented to me. And based on my initial analysis, before I even spoke to him, I started to see the pattern of what I would have recognized as incidents that got connected to that location that really didn't have a specific connection or nexus to the actual business itself. It just is very likely that there's so much activity in that area on Indian Hill by the 10 freeway, and that even being north of the 10 freeway, probably, well, in reality, I have to say probably going all the way down to Indian Hill, but becoming lesser to some extent depending on the type of activity as you get closer to Indian Hill, and some very consistent criminal activity that occurs up there as well as down on Indian Hill and Holt Boulevard. I meant to say all the way down Holt Boulevard on Indian Hill.
We do have 5 more consent calendar items that have been pulled for this evening. So Councilmember Lopez, do you have any additional
One
comments?
final thing. Chief Avels, could you provide me, please, the calls at the Trans Center from the exact same dates that I got from the Claremont PD? So that would be...
Instead of providing it to you, could that be provided to the city manager and the entire council?
Sure.
I don't believe this information should ever be provided to one specific council member. Thank you.
I would like to see the call volume at the Trans Center from 1/8/2020 to either present day, or at the time that this report was given to me, it was November 14th.
So
I
yeah,
just
we
want to see the comparison.
Well, I'll do my best to provide you as accurate as possible. Bear in mind, we did switch CAD and RMS systems in this period as well. So there could be a hiccup with some of the information, but we'll do the best that we can to get. Yeah.
I appreciate what you can provide.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And thank you to you, Chief Avels, for your extensive research on this issue, and also to City Manager Starr for his report. As you heard me say earlier, I was, when we were here last, I thought this was a pretty good idea until I heard that data. But now that the data is not as it was presented, I still think it's a pretty good idea. Having said that, I will move for approval of agreement number 21-66 with Greyhound Lanes.
I Councilmember, I thought we were going to take all the consent calendar items in one omnibus motion. That's okay.
I thought we were doing one at a time.
That's okay.
Mayor Dutray has his hand raised on.
Yes, I know. Give me a moment. Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead. Mr. Mayor, can you hear us? We just saw you unmute yourself.
Do you hear me now? It helps if I mute myself.
Yes.
Okay, I'll second the motion. And what I want to say a couple of things. First of all, as council members, it is very, very important that we work closely with staff. And that may not necessarily mean if you like staff, but making sure that when you have questions or you have information, that is provided to staff, and staff has an opportunity to evaluate it and get back to not just one council member, but the entire city council, so the entire city council can make a decision based on facts. Second of all, I want to say it's really important that when we make statements and it affects another city like the city of Claremont, it's really important that we respect our surrounding cities. And the reason why I say that is I did receive a phone call from one of the city council members who was very upset from the article. The councilor did talk to the police chief, and after that lieutenant wanted to let me know that the information that was noted in the newspaper article was inaccurate, but was very upset that these type of allegations were made. And, we're working with the city of Claremont trying to bring the goal line in. It's very, very important that we maintain our diplomatic relationships with our surrounding cities, especially when it comes to regional and important projects. Now, third of all, I want to say is that bus stop in question at Metrolink, and the city manager can respond as well. That bus stop belongs to Omnitrans, and currently that bus stop is not being utilized on Omnitrans. And if I'm correct, if Omnitrans decides to begin adding a new route and wants to use that stop, they don't need the city of Montclair's approval, if I'm correct, Mr. Starr. You can correct me if you want to. And if they utilize that bus stop, it's going to have at least 10 stops a day, maybe 15, which I believe Greyhound will have 13 stops a day. So, again, if Omnitrans wants to use that bus stop, they can. Fourth of all, we just approved a new restaurant, Panera Bread, and I suspect if the police chief is still there, we will have calls for service there. And that's the nature of the beast is when you bring in service, you bring in retail, you bring in residential, that generates calls for service. And that's just what we do as a city. I realize as a city, we want to minimize the calls of service, but that's part of our job to do when we do bring service. And that's the fifth point I want to bring in is that this is a service of the community Greyhound, and we do have a multimodal transportation there where we have buses, we have trains, we have private buses, we have public buses that go through there, and it creates all sorts of connections for people to transport themselves, especially those who don't have vehicles. And it's kind of like an airport, Are we going to decide at an airport, if we operate an airport, which airlines we want and don't want because of calls of service they generate someplace else? So I want to go back to the first point. If you have a concern, you have an issue, you have data, it's really important to work with staff and get that information through, and staff can evaluate that. So when the city council meets, that we have accurate information and we don't have one person has separate information, making allegations, then we have to continue a meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item will be considered with all of our consent calendar items tonight. So we will take one vote on all of those.
I think this item should be taken separately because there is a potential no vote just for this item so far.
Okay, that's not what I heard earlier, but that's fine. If that's the decision from the city clerk, we do have a motion and a second. Before I ask for a vote on this specific item, I will make my comment. I will keep it short. There is no 7-Eleven near this site. The 7-Eleven in question is on San Bernardino and Indian Hill. If the Greyhound moves to Montclair, I don't think somebody is going to buy alcohol at the 7-Eleven on San Bernardino and Indian Hill and walk probably 5-6 miles to the Greyhound station in Montclair. We don't have those attractive, if you want to say, nuisances around. They're a convenience for many people. It depends on which side you're on. They're an attractive nuisance to some, a convenience to others. I see a very different set of circumstances at the Trans Center. And I do believe that Greyhound is serving a population of places to go that airlines and trains don't travel to. There are parts of the Central Valley that Amtrak does not serve. The airlines do not serve. You have to travel to Fresno or Bakersfield if the airlines fly there, and then from there, take some other type of a conveyance to get to some of the smaller cities up and down the Central Valley. It also, Greyhound travels to places east of here, into Arizona and Nevada, and again, some of those places are not served by the train. They're not served by an airline. For many people, there are people who still are not comfortable flying. I know people who will never fly. There are people who may not be able to take the train because Amtrak doesn't, it's not what it was 70 years ago when we had Santa Fe and Union Pacific and everybody serving a great passenger railroad system. It just doesn't go there. And for some people, driving is not an option. So those are my comments on that. I see a multimodal center including a Greyhound and hopefully other forms of transportation that may be out there in the future. I do not yet know. Hopefully there may be some type of a shuttle that'll go to the Ontario airport at some point or some other place. So with that, we do have a motion by Councilmember Johnson, a second by Mayor Dutre, whose hand, the mayor's hand is up. Are there other comments, Mr. Mayor? Okay. With that, we have a motion by Councilmember Johnson, a second by Councilmember, by Mayor Dutre. Madam City Clerk, would you entertain the vote?
Councilmember Lopez.
For clarifications, there's a 7-Eleven on Monte Vista and Arrow walking distance to our Trans Center. No.
Councilmember Martinez.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue.
Aye.
Mayor Dutre.
Aye.
Thank you. That's 4-0 with Councilmember Lopez dissenting.
That
Sorry,
brings us
4-1.
4-1. Okay, that brings us to item number 4, consider approval of agreement 21-80 with Flock Group for a 2-year lease for 40 automated license plate reader cameras. Who pulled that item?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I did.
Okay.
I have a quick question for Chief Avels about the license plate readers. I just wanted to know if they could be connected to the proposed camera system that we talked about a month or two ago.
No, that's a little bit different because they're not surveillance cameras. They actually are cameras taking photographs of the activity, whether it be a vehicle, in which they would obtain specific characteristics of the vehicle as well as the license plate, but also if there's pedestrian activity or bicyclist activity in that particular immediate area, it would take photographs in it. So it's not connected in any way to a surveillance monitoring type system.
So it's reported to your department in a different system?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. That's all I wanted.
Okay, item number 5, consider approval of agreement number 21-81 with Wildan Engineering for electrical engineering design services for the electric vehicle charging station. Are there questions on this?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
I pulled the item, question of City Manager Starr. This particular charging station, is this the one potentially to happen near Moreno and Benson?
No, these are individual charging stations at city facilities for use for city vehicles. If they are in an open parking lot, then they can certainly be accessible by members of the public as well. But what you're speaking of is a separate project. That would be a multi-unit charging station.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'm done, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. That brings us to consent calendar item number 8, consider approval of agreement 21-84 with Loma Linda University Children's Hospital, a memorandum of understanding for the Montclair Police Department's use of Children's Assessment Center.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I pulled that item. I have another question for the chief. So how, just out of curiosity, how do the children get to Loma Linda? Are they escorted by police? Is there some other social services person who takes the children there? I know their parents probably don't.
It actually could be a combination. So we actually have used these services for many years now. There just was a recent change in the MOU that actually reduced our cost. But basically what it is children who are victims of abuse in many fashions can be interviewed and assessed psychologically and or examined physically for abuse. And so that is the location where we have taken these victims to for this type of an assessment that aids in the prosecution later on in court of the suspects involved.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
That brings us to consent calendar item number 12, consider approval of agreement number 21-88 with San Bernardino County Fire Protection District, a memorandum of understanding for participation in a 2021 regional assistance grant to firefighters.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, question to the city clerk. Was item B9 not pulled?
C9 was pulled also.
Okay, B9 as well.
And then I'm inadvertently lumped in item B12 and B13. You can take B12 off the list. I don't need to discuss that.
Thank you. Item number B9, consider approval of agreement number 21-85 with Trans Tech to prepare a school area signage plan for Vernon Middle School.
I believe that was my item, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted the public to know that I believe at our council workshop discussing the infrastructure projects, our Public Works Director and the City Manager stated that in December we would start looking at, I was going to say Monte Vista or Margarita. Oh my gosh, that takes us way back. Vernon Middle School was going to be the pilot program for signage. So for those members of the public that have come to the podium and online have expressed interest about Vernon Middle School, this is the start of looking at increased and improved signage for Vernon Middle School.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a public comment on this item as well.
Yes, and is this in the council chambers or is it online?
It was submitted online
Okay,
by Jose Perez.
okay. And is Mr. Perez still with us this
He
evening?
is in the audience.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, council. I am a resident at 5506 San Bernardino Street. That is across the street from Vernon Middle School. Approximately a month ago, I had Public Works level the grass area in front of my home, which is a safe route to school. They also had in mind that they decided to want to plant a tree there after exchanging several emails with Council Ben, and also he exchanged emails with City Manager. The decision of planting the tree was removed. My objective was not to, we wanted to be able to level that, but also pave the actual grass area there. To the east of my home, there is no grass area. As you guys might know, kids drop sodas, lollipops, cans, gum. It is very hard for me to maintain the grass area there in front. As there will be construction moving forward in that area, I believe it would be a great idea for that area to be paved so that full section of the school could be full cement and it could be treated in different ways. Thank you for your time, and I want to wish you guys a Merry Christmas, and thank you.
And I would suggest perhaps, Mr. Diaz, you have his contact information?
We can get it, and Public Works Director Monica Herrera can
Right.
also deal with it as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody will be contacting you on that. That brings us to item number 13, consider approval of agreement 21-90 with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, a memorandum of agreement to conduct investigations of officer-related shootings and in-custody deaths. Mr. Lopez, Councilmember, excuse me.
That's fine. Mr. City Manager, or maybe the police chief, I'm fine with the concept, fine with the proposal. Here's my only concern. This contract we're going to be entering into could potentially go on into perpetuity because it says it is only to be terminated at any time of either party. So therefore, if everyone's fine with it, it can go on for 10, 15 years if the program works. The issue regarding releasing or public records requests of reports involving officers that are involved in a officer-involved shooting or death. We are allowing, well, first of all, the county sheriffs will hand over the public request to us. But let's say we have a more, for all intents and purposes, not cop-friendly sheriff. At what point can we make sure that a new administration in the sheriff's department doesn't undermine the release of public records or somehow start freely releasing information about any potential incidents from our officers that involved a firearm that went off or anyone that was hit or anyone that was deceased? That's my question. That's my concern.
So generally, when there's a change in the sheriff, as with this one, which is why this one has come about now, there's a new MOU signed. Even though it says that it could go on for great lengths of time, it generally doesn't.
Okay.
This particular one really, well, just so you know, we've always had this agreement with the county sheriff. And even though this agreement exists, I still have the authority to handle the investigation ourselves. The chiefs in the past, including myself, have always had that agreement with the county sheriff as a measure of transparency to ensure impartiality and fairness, that we've asked them to take on that investigative responsibility. And we've done that, like I said, for my entire career here, and as well since I took over as chief, because we think it's the right thing to do. Generally, every police agency does that with a small few. You know, there's a small fraction out there that feel that they can still do it and remain impartial. And I would state that we could remain impartial too, but to remove that question from the community, you know, it's better to have an independent agency conducting that investigation. What's really caused us to develop these types of MOUs now has really been the implementation of Senate Bill 1421 with the requirement now to release certain information under the Public Records Act requests. And, you know, what I can tell you is if anybody is more restrictive about what information they feel shouldn't be released, it's probably the county sheriff more so than us. But nevertheless, I'll leave those interpretations to those moments in which those requests are made. What I can say is anytime a request is made for that information, we've agreed that, you know, if it's our individual agency, that we would be responsible for those releases of information. And that's why that information is outlined in that MOU as to whose responsibility it would be depending on who is actually involved. You know, I can't speak to something that could potentially happen somewhere down the road, but in all likelihood, I don't foresee something like that happening, considering we've been involved in this type of process for more than a couple decades, so.
Well, I'm encouraged by that this has been something that has been commonplace. My only concern was SB 1421. That hasn't been in the mix those prior years, so that's a little bit concerning potentially for me. That said, like, as I said at the outset, I fully am fine with the arrangement, fine with the concept. I don't have a problem with our department investigating things or handing it over to a neutral party. I think that will be vetted fairly and adequately and for, full review by the public. I'm fine with that. I was just concerned about the public records request information and the chain of command and who might be able to release that information if indeed. I wouldn't want you as chief or whoever succeeds you as chief 10 years down the road, being undermined by a different administration in the sheriff's department. And that was my concern. And for the record, I have no problem with Sheriff Dykes, by the way. Just don't want that thrown out there as well. I'm fine with the current administration and all that. I know the relationship is great. I know the sheriff, he's a great man. I'm just thinking long-term, that's all.
I understand what you're saying, and I have no concerns either, and I don't see that it'll be an issue in the future. I'm certain if there's any other change in the administration that those MOUs would be updated at those moments in time, and,
We can retract them at any time then.
Of course,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, with that brings us to the vote on the pulled consent calendar items. To make it clear, we will be voting on, Madam City Clerk, if I'm correct, it would be item number...
Yeah, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, this is Mayor
yes.
Detroit. I'm going to move for approval for remaining of the consent calendar items.
Oh, thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lopez. Madam City Clerk, please, I was trying earlier just to have the number of each one called out, but Madam City Clerk, please do the roll call.
Yes, and that is B16, C4, 5, 8, 9, and 13.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue?
Aye.
And Mayor Dutray.
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes. That brings us to item number 10, a council workshop implementation of the residential and commercial organic waste recycling programs in compliance with SB 1383. The council may consider continuing this item to an adjourned meeting of Tuesday, January 18th, 2022 at 5:45 p.m. Is there a motion to that effect?
So move, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Lopez, second by Councilmember Johnson. Madam City Clerk, do the roll call.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue?
Aye.
Mayor
Motion-
Dutray?
Mayor Detroit, aye.
Motion passes. That brings us to communications, item number 11, department reports. Ms. Richter? Nothing?
None.
Very successful events this year. The Dashing Through Montclair, the home decorating contest, very, very successful. Thank you. Madam City Attorney.
Nothing from me this evening, except to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Mr. City Manager.
No items. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone.
That brings us to item number E, cancellation of the Monday, January 3rd, 2022 regular joint meeting of the City Council. We're now item number F, council members and directors' comments. I will start with Mayor Dutray.
Well, thank you very much. Again, I just want to wish everybody happy holidays. I also want to recognize both police and fire due to the incident we had last Friday, the tragic incident we had last Friday, and the professionalism those departments performed to deal with this very difficult situation. So thank you there. And also want to finally say we're very happy of our Montclair High School Cavalier football team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will now entertain comments. Well, I'll start with ladies first. Starting on my left, everybody's right. Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone. Happy New Year. And thank you to Montclair Police Department and Fire Department and our city staff for putting on all of the events and toy donations and the Chamber of Commerce for doing that as well. It's really something to see everyone from our city out there doing something on their free time to help out our residents.
Thank you, Councilmember Martinez. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I just have one quick statement. I want to wish happy birthday to Jesus Christ. Season's greetings, belated happy Hanukkah, happy holidays, Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas, happy Kwanzaa, and I wish you a new year filled with more prosperity than you can imagine.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and colleagues. I want to piggyback on what the mayor just said about the Montclair High football team. It was great to attend all three of their CIF games, the two here in the city and then the one in Riverside. Unfortunately, we came up short in the championship game, but nonetheless, it was great to see a significant number of Montclair residents even make the trek out to Riverside to support our boys. They did excellent. They're nothing to be ashamed of. Looking forward to the next season. I know that they're excited and they're jazzed about it, and they're already laying groundwork to have a successful season for the next school year. So our family brought a significant contingent of people, even alumni from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s that made the trek out to the games here and the game in Riverside. Proud of you guys. Wish you all the best. Much success in 2022. As I had stated several months ago, we suffered a death in the family. In the first week of December, we finally were able to bury that relative. And I have received a lot of calls and texts from people, staff, residents, those inquiring regarding where I was. I know I was kind of MIA for a while. I decided to go ahead and play it safe by minimizing contact with people so I would not get sick during the funeral period and being with family. And that was a time-consuming process, and I hope to never have to deal with that because we've done 2 of those this year. But nonetheless, I apologize for missing the tree lighting event. I apologize, Denise, for missing the chamber toy drive. I enjoyed seeing the pictures. I apologized for missing the police and fire toy drive at Costco, dashing through Montclair, and the high school football team recognition presentation that took place. As this year comes to a close, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas, a blessed and prosperous New Year. Thank you to city staff here in the building, working the counter, the cleaning crew, department heads, planning, finance, city council staff, the city clerk's office, public works staff working the streets, the parks, the alleys, cleaning graffiti, code enforcement, our homeless division, our police department that's there 24/7, our fire department that's here 24/7, the city manager's office and department, all of you that make this city go, thank you so much from top to bottom, and most importantly to our residents. Thank you for being the best in the region. Our motto is the people are the city, and we no doubt are, and we would not be the case if it were not for you. Thank you so much to my colleagues. I got you a small little simple Christmas gift. I just couldn't resist. It was, don't take it as a gag gift or a white elephant gift, but there was just a little funny sense of humor that I just figured I just couldn't resist, so I put a little something in bags for you. You can give it to a couple of nieces, nephews, sons, daughters, let them play with it. But anyhow, Merry Christmas to you as colleagues as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. I have a few things to say, and then I will make a Christmas greeting. One, on Thursday, December 16th, I was elected, and I'm not one to necessarily brag about myself, but I was elected Secretary-Treasurer of the Gold Line JPA. It's something I'm very, very proud of because this is so important to not only our city, to the region. Robin Carter from Laverne will continue to be chair. Ed Reese from Claremont is the vice chair. And as I said, I will be the Secretary-Treasurer. So it's a big duty, and I really look forward to doing what we can to continue moving the Gold Line forward. The accident last Friday, great work by the police and fire and everybody, all our city staff that had been involved with that. What's interesting to note is we could have had all the flashing signs we wanted. We could have had a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit. This gentleman still would have done this. We need to make certain that we do what we can each of us individually, so that these things don't happen. It's sad, it's tragic, and I appreciate the effort put forward on it. I will remind everybody that we are still in a very serious position with coronavirus. The Omicron variant is out there. If you have not been inoculated, please do so. If you need to receive your booster, please do so. I think that that is important. We do have in the state a mask mandate that began December 15th and will end January 15th due to the coronavirus Omicron outbreak. So that is a directive from the state of California that there is an indoor mask mandate. And finally, as I try to do every year, I have written something I think that I will read for the holidays. As we wrap presents and sing carols and gaze at the glitter of boxes brave with bows under the glow of a well-trimmed tree, let us all pause and see those down on their luck in a somewhat different light. Give the gift of recognition to the unappreciated. Cherish forgotten heroes who were mistaken for losers. Let dreams come true for all those who need a break. Tonight, let there be laughter in all this country's poor neighborhoods and forsaken places. Let nobody go to bed cold or hungry on this holiday. No policeman be shot, no child abused, no woman battered, and no infant born addicted to drugs. Let us write a song for all of the anonymous, hardworking people with grueling jobs who obey the law, pay their taxes, educate their children, never get into trouble, and simply struggle to make ends meet. Let no parent feel the torment of not being able to afford toys for their children. Give a second chance to somebody in trouble. Hire the guy who once went to jail and is eager to work, for Christ would have done that. Let a high school dropout discover the library, fall in love with books, go back to school, and become a teacher. Light a candle for all of those who have died from the coronavirus and for their families who have an empty place at their holiday table. Let us give praise to all those scientists working in a lab who helped to create a vaccine for this pandemic scourge and simply saved lives. Bring in the choirs of angels for the healthcare professionals who risked their lives to save others. Remember the Holy Family and their flight into Egypt. Make this a miracle Christmas for somebody in a homeless shelter and for an immigrant just here from the Middle East, Africa, Mexico, or some other very distant homeland. Most of all on this holiday and at this beautiful season, let the timid find confidence, the lost find a direction, the lonely find love, and each soul peace. Merry Christmas. Happy 2022. And with that, we are adjourned to our meeting of January
18.
January 16th, 18th, 2022. Thank you.